Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely...
The term media is a broad concept that has come to take command of our very lives, to an extent anyway. Like a tool, it aids in the process of shaping the molds of our mind. From our community, our family, and our country, the various ways information flows takes root in people's minds differently. The book Mass Communication Living in the Media World goes over 15 chapters of the various causes and effects of the media on the populations around the world. And with 15 chapters, summarizing them into 15 specific takeaways is an arduous task. But let's go ahead and get into it with Chapter 1. Chapter 1, titled Communication in the Media World, covers the three main types of communication, including intrapersonal, which is communication with the self, interpersonal, which includes communication that is verbal or otherwise with another person, and group communication, which includes communication where one person may be talking to a group of two or more, often as a leader or main speaker. The main takeaway from this chapter is that communication takes many different forms that often intersect, and that can include things outside of digital technology. Chapter 2, titled Mass Communication Effects, goes over the various theories and effects that occur to populations when under the influence of the media. This includes propaganda or direct effects, agenda setting, uses and gratifications theory, and the spiral of silence, just to name a few. The main takeaway from Chapter 2 is that there are and can be various effects that the media has on a population, but that no one effect is more dominant than the other. Chapter 3, the media business consolidation, globalization, and the long tail, begin with the introduction on America's rise to private industry, detailing how the control of the media changed from the 50s until today. It mentions how tech conglomerates like Facebook or Google have become mainline media entities in today's world. In the original colonies, media was historically private. This is due to the availability of technology during the pre-industrial and early industrial age. With some mention of internet media, this chapter ultimately gives us the takeaway that big media is controlled by corporations and regulated by the government. This clip from the film Network from 1976 details our current world now.
There are no nations, there are no peoples, there are no Russians, there are no Arabs, there are no third worlds, there is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Chapter 4, titled Books, the Birth of Mass Media, as the title states, covers books as the beginning of mass media. They begin with the ideas of pictographs all the way to the mass-produced publications of books. In addition, it breaks down the three levels of book publishing and distribution and finishes with the differentiation between popular books and good books and how the long tail has transformed the book business forever. The main takeaway from this chapter being that as long as writing has existed, whether it be stone, paper, or digital, there has always been a way to log these signs and sigils that we use every day. Now, unless ancient humans had telepathy, whether it be hieroglyphs, pictographs, scrolls, manuscripts, journals, or books, each contributed to the earliest forms of mass media and communication over a home, village, city, or town. It represents the spread and continuation of ideas and information and acts as the precursor to today's media. The main takeaway from chapter 5 being that magazines were more dominant in the 18th and 19th century, but today still remain a mainstay component of our society. They are similar to the long tail in that they print many kinds of financial, men's, women's, gaming, film, and other types of news and content for a very niche specific audience, and they can reach a very wide spectrum of these people through these magazine publications. Chapter 6, titled Newspaper and News, Reflection of a Democratic Society, speaks about the development of colonial American press. It describes 4 major types of newspapers, 6 basic news values, reporter risk, and finally explains how the internet and mobile technology has changed news and newspaper industries forever. The final takeaway from this chapter is that newspaper and its role in political media is long-winded and widespread. Newspaper has a direct bearing on political ideology in any country, but many people criticize these media giants for being either too far left due to the members of the media having liberal ideologies, or being too far right for being owned by big conservative organizations. Either way, major print media is directly linked to big business and political commentary, both biased and unbiased. Now, Chapter 7, Audio, Music, and Talk Across Media, goes over my favorite topic, which is audio technology. Now, in all honesty, covering the entire history of audio tech would make this video entirely too long. But as far as the chapter, it discusses how this technology influenced the industry of music, how rock and roll developed out of 2 different types of music, and describes how radio transformed from interpersonal to mass communication, and finally, how musicians turn into global. Despite the fact that TV and visual media sometimes rely on audio in conjunction, music relies solely on audio to convey its messages to the masses. Music used to be much more social, but with the increase of streaming and personalization, has become much more, personal. We then go to Chapter 8, Movies, Mass-Producing Entertainment. Here, we dive into the studio system's rise and fall in the film world. As with this chapter's name, it also discusses the growth of the television industry and how it influenced the movie industry. It goes over the blockbuster era of movie rentals and concludes with the evolution of digital production and projection in film. With this change, it has led to the internet and other long-tail media like YouTube, which has changed. Overall, this chapter makes me question the influence of film on the population. As the chapter states, the debate is ongoing, some believing film does not control society but instead reflects it, not knowing that mirrors affect the viewer the most. People used to show up in suits to see movies. They, at least before COVID-19, went in large groups, spent lots of money on snacks, and in the end, take the experiences of movies with them for the rest of their lives. If it elicits an emotional response, it can ultimately influence the observer to believe or at least sympathize with just about anything that they see in these films. Chapter 9, Television, Broadcast, and Beyond, discusses the rise and use of television and broadcast media. Like film, this combines the visual and audio elements to convey and spread information. The main takeaway here is that TV broadcasts have shifted and molded in many ways since its inception. From anime to sports, there are options for everyone in various formats. Like film, TV gives people things to contemplate and to put their minds on. Chapter 10, Online Media, Internet, Social Media, and Video, details the creation and development of internet technology, then explains the 3 defining components of the World Wide Web and its 9 principles. It gives us 5 components of social media, then finally rounds us out with a discussion on content, intellectual property, and internet privacy. The greatest takeaway from this chapter is that Tim's vision came to life. It became a decentralized system that allowed for the endless and free distribution of information and content the world over. With the introduction of laptop computers, cell phones, and gaming consoles, the internet has an infinite use. Video games being my favorite, I have invested much of my life into the use of internet for fun, learning, and monetization. The internet has connected every form of media into one place and could be mankind's worst or greatest achievement. Chapter 11, Advertising and Selling a Message, we discuss the growth and reasoning behind the advertising and its importance in media. The book defines what advertising is and its 6 different forms, and also introduces us to the controversy surrounding child-based ads. The main idea taken from here is that as technology and the need for it has increased, so too has the need for revenue in advertising. In many ways, media is directly associated with advertising, if not a product, a service, or idea. Companies allocate a large budget to making sure they have proper advertising to reach the widest audience possible. It is, in many ways, a science. Chapter 12, Public Relations, introduces us to how public relations rose as a profession and describes its 3 major functions. The final takeaway from this chapter is that PR describes the process of the middleman between organizations and the masses. They act as the go-between to boost the image or diffuse public tensions to an entity that may or may not be guilty of strange and unnecessary practices. Every institution you can think of have a PR process of some kind, from schools to the NBA. Chapter 13, Media Law, Free Speech and Fairness, talks about the development of free press in the United States. The chapter's takeaway is that the issue of free speech is a multifaceted issue. How much can be said before consequences need to be made? Is anyone allowed a free and honest trial despite what the media may portray? Can you say whatever you want to damage a person's reputation? Can you expose the government? These are important questions in developing a system that allows for people to say what they want. That is because of word sound power, which idealizes words and their influence on the minds of men. Chapter 14, Media Ethics and Truthfulness, and 15, Global Communication in the World, talk about the various ethics defined with truthful media approaches. It deals with the disasters and issues journalists face when being truthful, and also the biases that rise in PR when faced with the masses. Despite which system we see it under, every system contains various elements of these different media effects and ethics. Looking back at the medium as the message, the ideology has stuck with me much more throughout the 2020 year. That is because of the rise of fake news and opposition to generally accepted and approved information. The medium as the message somewhat ignores the message itself and extends it to how people gain the message. In this way, the internet, as free and open as it is the message itself. It is the tool used for human thought to take hold and travel the globe today. As with books and television, they display the history of technology and media just by existing and being utilized today. In every way in which these messages are received and the various social and mental hoops are jumped to regulate and control information today are the overall point of the medium as a message. In this way, it is usually less important than what is printed rather than the fact that the technology exists and the regulations for it exist. So when we say most media is controlled by a certain group, it means that this limited grouping controls the message itself by controlling the medium. And with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'm out of here.